Ladies and gentlemen, you see, a woman who lets God rebuild her, she's not the same woman who broke down. She's dangerous now, not because she's got something to prove, but because she's already survived the worst and still chose to get up. That kind of strength, that don't come from motivation. That comes from transformation. She's not just patched up, she's rebuilt. And let me tell you something. When God rebuilds you, He don't use cheap material. He don't duct tape you back together. No, He reforges you in the fire. He rewrites your story with tears, with truth, and with purpose. This woman, she's got battle scars, but they don't define her. They remind her of who she was and of who she will never be again. She walks different now, head high, spirit still, eyes clear. The enemy looks at her and trembles, not because she's perfect, but because she knows who she is. More importantly, she knows who she is. She don't need applause anymore. She don't need the approval of people who once overlooked her. That part of her died. God buried it and raised something new. And now when she prays, heaven listens. When she speaks, hell backs off. She's not loud. She's not flashy. She's rooted. She's anchored. She's got a fire in her belly and peace in her soul. The kind of peace that says, I've been through hell, but I didn't stay there. So if the enemy thought he could keep her down, he made a mistake, because God didn't just heal her, He empowered her. Now she's dangerous, because a woman who's been rebuilt by God can't be broken by anything else. Brokenness is not the end, but the beginning of God's reconstruction. When life shatters your plans, when the weight becomes too much to carry, and when your heart feels too wounded to beat steady, it's easy to believe that you've reached the end. But God sees differently. Where you see ruin, He sees raw material. Where you see ashes, He sees the foundation of something new, something holy, something unshakable. Brokenness is not failure in God's eyes. It's a surrender. It's the moment when your strength runs out and His begins. God doesn't despise the broken. In fact, He's drawn to it. He steps into the middle of the chaos, not to condemn, but to restore. He takes the shattered pieces of your life, your identity, your dreams, and He begins a rebuilding process that no human hand can replicate. But reconstruction with God doesn't look like putting things back the way they were. He doesn't rebuild to make you who you were. He rebuilds to make you who you were always meant to be. The process isn't quick, and it's not always painless. It requires trust, surrender, and faith that even in silence, He's working. He removes what was never meant to stay. He strengthens what's weak, heals what's hidden, and aligns what's been off course. Brokenness becomes sacred ground where God rewrites your story not with a pen, but with grace, power, and divine purpose. It's in that place, on your knees at the end of yourself, that true transformation begins. Because only when we are broken open can God fill us fully. Only when the old has died can the new arise. So don't fear the breaking. In God's hands, it's never the end. It's the beginning of something far greater than you imagined. When a woman surrenders her pain to God, He turns it into power. Pain, when carried alone, can become a weight that breaks her spirit, clouds her mind, and silences her voice. It becomes a quiet torment buried deep behind the smile she wears for the world. But the moment she releases it, truly lets it go and places it in the hands of a God who knows her, sees her, and loves her. That's the moment everything begins to shift. Surrender isn't weakness. It's the most courageous act of trust. In surrender, she no longer tries to fix it on her own. She stops numbing, hiding, pretending. She stops performing for approval or begging for validation. She opens the locked doors of her soul and invites God in, not to observe, but to heal. And that's where the miracle happens. God doesn't waste her pain. He transforms it. He takes the wounds and reshapes them into wisdom. He takes the tears and turns them into strength. He takes the ache and crafts it into anointing. What once made her feel unworthy now fuels her with boldness. What once silenced her now sharpens her voice. Her pain becomes her platform, not to gain attention, but to offer hope. She speaks from a place of healing, not bitterness. She walks with a quiet fire that can't be extinguished because it was lit by a God who specializes in resurrection. This woman becomes dangerous, not because she's aggressive or hardened, but because she's free. Free from what once held her, free from what was meant to destroy her. And that freedom is her power. The very thing that tried to break her becomes the foundation she stands on. And from that foundation, she rises. Not just whole, but holy. A rebuilt woman has unshakable faith forged through fire. She didn't stumble into strength. She walked through the flames to find it. She knows what it means to be tested, not once, but over and over, in the quiet battles no one saw and the loud storms that threatened to take her under. Her faith wasn't born in comfort. It was birthed in chaos. It was refined in disappointment, solidified in heartbreak, and anchored in the moments when she had nothing left but God. She's been through seasons where prayers felt unanswered, where the silence of heaven was deafening, and where hope seemed just out of reach. But she kept showing up, kept believing, kept pressing into the one who never let go, even when her grip weakened. The fire didn't consume her. It refined her. It burned away the illusions, the pride, the fear, the need for control. And what remained was something pure, something holy, something fierce. This kind of woman doesn't need to see the whole path to take the next step. She's walked blindly before, guided only by faith, and she's seen God move mountains she couldn't climb. Her confidence isn't in herself. It's in the God who rebuilt her from the ground up. She knows what it costs to stand where she stands, and that memory gives her courage every time the winds try to shake her. She doesn't panic in pressure. She doesn't fold in fear, because the fire that once threatened to break her became the very place where her faith was set ablaze. And now, no matter what comes, she knows the same God who brought her through before will do it again. Her faith isn't fragile, it's fire, tested, storm-proof, and built on a foundation no trial can shake. She no longer seeks validation from the world, only from God. There was a time when the opinions of others held power over her, when the approval of people determined how she saw herself, how she measured her worth, and how far she dared to dream. She lived for applause, for acceptance, for acknowledgement that she mattered. But all of that changed when she discovered that worldly validation is fleeting, shallow, and often tied to performance. One moment you're celebrated, the next you're forgotten. That kind of approval builds insecurity, not confidence. She reached a breaking point where the noise of the world became too loud and too empty. So she turned inward and upward seeking the voice of the one who created her. She stopped asking, "Am I enough for them?" and started asking, "Am I walking in who God called me to be?" And in that shift, something broke off of her: fear of rejection, fear of not being liked, fear of being misunderstood. Now, her validation comes from a deeper place. It comes from knowing she is chosen, loved, and called by a God who sees beyond the surface. She no longer needs to perform to be seen. She doesn't shift to fit into places she's not meant to be. She doesn't dress her value in likes, compliments, or empty praise. Her identity is secure, not because people accept her, but because God affirms her. This woman is grounded. She moves with quiet confidence, not arrogance. She listens more than she explains. She speaks truth even when it's unpopular, because she's not afraid to stand alone with God rather than be surrounded without Him. Her value isn't up for debate. She walks in freedom because she's finally rooted in the only opinion that truly matters: God's. Her scars become testimonies, not limitations. Every scar tells a story, not of defeat, but of survival. She doesn't hide them or cover them up in shame anymore. What once reminded her of pain now reminds her of purpose. Each scar represents a chapter where life tried to break her, where the enemy tried to silence her, but God stepped in and said, "Not this one. She's mine." She wears them not as signs of weakness, but as proof of strength, as proof that she walked through fire and came out on the other side, refined, not ruined. There was a time when her scars made her feel disqualified, like damaged goods. She thought they made her less worthy, less beautiful, less capable, but God rewrote that narrative. He showed her that her scars are evidence of His healing, not her failure. They are marks of transformation. They speak louder than any polished image ever could, because they're real. They hold weight. They hold power. Now, she speaks from those places. She encourages others not with perfection, but with authenticity. She doesn't just say, "God is good." She says, "God is good, and I know because He met me in my darkest hour." Her story gives others permission to hope again. Her honesty invites healing. What was once her greatest source of shame has become her greatest source of impact. She no longer sees her past as a liability. She sees it as her launching pad. She walks boldly, knowing her scars are sacred. They're not signs of what she lost. They're signs of what she overcame. She doesn't live limited by what happened to her. Instead, she rises daily in the truth that what was meant to break her only made her stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable. Her prayers are warfare. Her silence is strategy. She's learned that not every battle is fought with words or action. Some are fought on her knees, in the stillness of midnight, in the privacy of her room, where only God hears. She doesn't need a platform or an audience to fight. She goes to war in the Spirit. Her prayers aren't soft wishes. They are declarations, commands, cries that shake the heavens and disturb the plans of the enemy. Every time she prays, she pushes back darkness. Every time she lifts her voice to God, she moves things in realms unseen. She doesn't waste her energy arguing with people or trying to prove herself. She's strategic with her silence because she knows that not everything deserves her reaction. Some things require restraint. Some battles aren't meant to be fought out loud. Her silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's discipline. It's a decision to let God defend her rather than stooping to the level of distraction. This woman has learned that being loud doesn't make you powerful, and being quiet doesn't make you passive. She's measured. She's intentional. When she speaks, it matters because her silence has weight. And when she prays, things shift. Her power is not in how loud she shouts, but in how deeply she believes. The enemy isn't intimidated by her volume. He's terrified of her authority. She understands the time to speak and the time to stay still. She knows when to fight with words and when to war in worship. Her strength lies not in chaos, but in clarity. And when she bows her head in prayer, she is not retreating, she is advancing. Her silence is not surrender. It's strategy soaked in faith and backed by heaven's armies. She walks with authority, not arrogance, because she knows who's backing her. There's a confidence in her step, not because she thinks she's better than anyone, but because she knows exactly who she belongs to. She's not trying to prove herself, and she's not desperate to be seen. She's already been affirmed by the only voice that truly matters. Her authority doesn't come from status, titles, or applause. It comes from the quiet assurance that heaven is behind her and within her. She's been through too much to play small now. She's learned that shrinking herself for the comfort of others doesn't serve anyone. But she also doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her presence speaks because her posture is rooted. She doesn't intimidate people with pride. She inspires them with peace. And that peace comes from walking in alignment with purpose, not popularity. The authority she carries was earned in the secret place, in the wrestling, in the waiting, in the quiet, yes, to God when no one was watching. Arrogance seeks to elevate self, but she seeks to elevate truth. She doesn't lead to be praised, she leads to serve. She doesn't take up space to compete. She takes her place because it was assigned by God, not granted by man. Her authority is humble, but it is undeniable. When she speaks, people listen, not because she demands attention, but because she carries revelation. When she moves, doors open, not because of her name, but because of His. She's not afraid of rejection, delay, or opposition. The enemy fears her not because she's loud, but because she's aligned. It's not the volume of her voice that shakes the enemy. It's the power of her positioning. She knows her place in God's kingdom, and that certainty gives her strength. She doesn't need to prove herself through noise or spectacle. Her authority comes from her alignment with a higher purpose, a divine calling that cannot be disrupted. When she moves in perfect synchronization with God's will, and that alignment carries with it a force that no enemy can overcome. The enemy knows that when she is aligned with God's truth, she is unstoppable. She doesn't walk aimlessly. She walks in purpose. She doesn't fight blindly. She fights with divine precision. Every step she takes is ordered by God, and the enemy can't predict her next move because she isn't driven by her own will. She's driven by divine direction. This alignment gives her an inner strength that cannot be broken, a focus that doesn't waver. When she prays, it's not just words in the air, it's power backed by heaven. When she speaks, it's not just noise, it's authority that commands respect. The enemy can fight against noise, he can resist force, but he trembles at the woman who is aligned with God, because that's a force he cannot defeat. She's not worried about being loud or noticeable. She's worried about staying in the will of God because she knows that's where her true power lies. She walks with the confidence of someone who knows the battle is already won, and the enemy knows that when she moves in alignment with God, his defeat is certain. She doesn't fight for victory. She fights from victory. The difference is profound. While others are caught in the struggle, trying to win, trying to overcome, she stands firm, knowing that the battle has already been won. She doesn't approach life's challenges with fear or uncertainty, wondering if she'll make it through. She approaches them with confidence because she's already seen the outcome. She fights from a place of victory that was secured for her long before she ever stepped onto the battlefield. This woman doesn't wrestle with doubt. She doesn't waste time questioning if she'll make it or if she's strong enough. She knows she is because she's fighting from the power of the victory Christ won on the cross. Her confidence comes from knowing that her strength isn't in herself. It's in the one who conquered everything. She doesn't have to win, she already has. The victory is in her hands, secured in the blood of Christ, and that victory is her foundation. When she faces a challenge, she doesn't fight to get the win. She fights because she's already won. Her mindset is different. She's not fighting to prove anything to anyone, not even herself. She's fighting to enforce the victory that has already been established. She knows the enemy is already defeated. She's simply walking in the authority of that truth. Every obstacle that stands in her way is just a reminder that the battle isn't about overcoming, but about stepping into the victory already promised. Her faith, her actions, her words, they all reflect the truth that she's not striving for a victory that's uncertain. She's living out a victory that's been sealed. That's why her fight is fierce, but rooted in peace. She fights because she knows the war is already won. When God rebuilds her, the devil can't recognize her anymore. The transformation is so profound, so complete, that the enemy is left confused, unable to discern who she is or what she's become. She walks into a room, and the enemy who once tried to destroy her looks for the old version, the one he nearly broke, the one he thought was defeated. But that woman no longer exists. She's been remade not by her own strength, but by the hands of a creator who specializes in turning ashes into beauty. Where the enemy once saw weakness, now he sees strength. Where he once saw doubt, now he sees unshakable faith. The woman who was broken, lost, and fragmented is now a force to be reckoned with, a woman whole, aligned, and empowered. She stands taller, walks straighter, and speaks with an authority that she never had before. She has a power in her that the devil doesn't understand. She's no longer moved by his lies, no longer manipulated by his tricks. The chains that once bound her are gone, and in their place is the armor of God that she now wears with confidence. The devil thought he had her figured out. He thought he knew how to keep her down, how to silence her. But what he didn't count on was God's ability to take what was broken and make it new. He doesn't recognize her because God's rebuilding isn't just about fixing what was broken. It's about transforming what was into something stronger, something more dangerous. The devil can't even identify her anymore because the woman she's become is nothing he ever expected and nothing he can defeat. She's no longer a victim of his schemes. She's a victor reborn in the power of God. The woman who lets God rebuild her is not just a survivor. She is a warrior. Her strength isn't in her own ability to endure, but in her willingness to surrender to the one who transforms pain into power and brokenness into victory. She doesn't seek validation from the world because she knows her worth comes from God alone. Her scars no longer define her. They are her testimony of resilience. Her prayers shake the heavens. Her silence is a weapon of strategy, and her authority comes from her alignment with God's purpose. She walks not for victory, but from it, knowing the battle has already been won. And when God rebuilds her, the enemy can't even recognize her because she is no longer the same. She is stronger, wiser, and unshakable. This woman is dangerous to the enemy, not because of her own strength, but because she is unstoppable in the power of the one who has called her, healed her, and empowered her.